I don't think there's going to be help desk. I don't think there's going to be SOC analysts anymore. I don't think there's going to be penetration testers anymore. We are doing a cybersecurity Q&A in the great outdoors. Tech people can get outside. So, this is proof that I'm not AI and that I get.
In 2021, a hacker uncovered a fatal weakness in the world's most important operating system.
What would you do with a key that gets you into any server on the internet?
Is this live to the public right now?
Yeah, it's live on the server.
Look, I'm not pleased. I would like you to change it back. At the time, just about everyone believed that hacking the system was impossible, but they were wrong.
Well, I can tell you how many systems would have been compromised, which would have been millions. Actually, I'm still surprised the mainstream news outlets haven't really covered this very much.
How close did we come?
We were weeks away from millions of internet servers being accessible to whoever crafted the backdoor. Anything from spying to ransom to taking down entire countries, you could have done it with this backdoor.
This hacker had realized the entire operating system rested on a single part, maintained by a single person, and that by compromising that one part, they could infect almost any server on the internet.
So how could we ever let ourselves get this vulnerable? Well, the story begins with a jammed printer.
The AI lab was buzzing. They had just installed the Xerox 9700. It was one of the first ever commercial laser printers. It was a pretty big deal. The only problem was it kept jamming.
You'd wait an hour figuring, I know it's going to be jammed, I'll wait an hour and go collect my printout. And then you'd see that it had been jammed the whole time. Frustration of the wazoo.
Richard Stallman, a researcher at the lab, thought that he had a solution. Years earlier, he had solved a similar problem by coding a simple program that sent an alert whenever there was a jam. Now, it didn't fix the problem mechanically, but it did make sure that a jam wouldn't go unnoticed.
He thought he could do a similar thing now. The only problem was that Xerox hadn't provided them the source code for the printer, and without it, Stallman couldn't write his code. So he tracked down the original developer.
And I said, hi, I'm from MIT. Could I have a copy of the printer source code? And he said, no, I promised not to give you a copy. I was stunned. I was angry. All I could think of was to turn around on my heel and walk out of his room. Maybe I slammed the door. And I thought about it later on, because I realized that I was seeing not just an isolated jerk, but a social phenomenon that was important and affected a lot of people.
This social phenomenon had slowly invaded the world of computer research. In the late 60s, engineers at AT&T's Bell Labs invented an operating system called Unix, which they shared widely across universities and research labs. This was a time of freedom. But by the 80s, AT&T started going after Unix clone developers for copyright infringement. Later, they even sued the University of California at Berkeley. The tech landscape had shifted. They wanted to close off software development. Companies were now making their employees sign non-disclosure agreements, prohibiting them from ever sharing their code with other programmers.
See, this was my first encounter with a non-disclosure agreement, and I was the victim. And the lesson it taught me was that non-disclosure agreements have victims. They're not innocent. They're not harmless.
Stallman wondered, maybe he could adapt to this new world.
But I realized that way I could have fun coding and I could make money. But at the end, I have to look back at my career and say, I have spent my life building walls to divide people. And I would have been ashamed of my life.
So Stallman chose a different path. He quit his job at MIT and in 1985 established the Free Software Foundation. And it worked to promote 4 basic freedoms. You should be free to run software for any purpose, free to study it, free to change it, and free to share it. Now, to ensure those freedoms, he created a legal license that developers could attach to their code, called the General Public License. And to stick it to AT&T, he started work on a project based on Unix, but built from the ground up, so AT&T couldn't sue.
He called the project GNU, a recursive acronym for GNU is not Unix.
Now, to replicate a Unix system, the GNU project had to recreate 3 layers of functionality. They needed the utilities, which were the everyday tools and commands, the shell, which is the terminal that people use to interact with the machine, and finally, the kernel, which is the core that talks to the hardware and manages memory. Now, over the next 7 years, the GNU project made much of that from scratch. They created the GCC code compiler, the bash shell, and a host of other core utilities. But they were always missing one key component: the kernel.
That changed in the fall of 1991 when Stallman visited the University of Helsinki to give a talk promoting the project. In the audience was a young computer science student who just happened to be building his own kernel from scratch. His version wasn't free, but after hearing Stallman speak, the student changed his mind and adopted the general public license. At first, he wanted to call it Free Unix, or Freaks, but his friend thought that sounded terrible, so he renamed it after the student himself, Linus Torvalds. Linus, Unix, well, that's how we got Linux.
That kernel, combined with the other components from the GNU project, became a full operating system. Now, technically, Linux only refers to that kernel, but a lot of people use it to refer to the whole operating system. So GNU and Linux and whatever else.
Because the code was open and free, and the projects built on it were too, a new model of software development took hold. Anyone could inspect the code, improve it, fix flaws, and generally just push development forward for everyone. So software split into 2 competing ideologies: proprietary closed source systems controlled by companies, and open source projects where the code was free.
Is free in 2 ways. It's free as in you don't have to pay for it, but it's all free to change it in any way you want, and that seems to be the much more important aspect. People are happy to pay for technology, but so often do they run into some roadblocks where you have to file a support ticket with some large company, they may or may not get the help they need, and engineers are just itching to just fix it themselves.
Developers could take that basic code, which was freely available, and then add on their own features relevant to their specific device. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So that's why Linux spread into all sorts of different applications.
Hello, I'm a Mac. And I'm a PC. No one else. No one.
Hi, I'm Linux. There are an estimated 30 million Linux users out there.
How long have you been standing there?
Long time.
And it's not even just limited to computers. Your electronic vacuum is definitely Linux. Your camera is definitely Linux. Most TVs, most electronics are Linux.
Linux even runs some of the most sensitive machines on the planet.
You can assume that Linux is pretty much used in anything of high security need, not necessarily because Microsoft, for instance, couldn't build something equally secure, but because usually there's secrecy involved in building, let's say, a new weapon system, and you don't necessarily want to have to work with some tech company. You don't want to involve more people than absolutely necessary.
Of the top 500 supercomputers in the world, every single one runs Linux. It's used in the Pentagon and on US nuclear submarines.
Every bank you can think of, really, manufacturers, hospitals, governments, defense organizations and things like that. They're all running Linux servers.
Today, Linux is everywhere. Most people are familiar with Windows and Mac OS, but they are not the most popular operating systems in the world. No, they are dwarfed by systems running a Linux kernel.
Android, with over 3 billion devices, is built on Linux. And it also powers the majority of internet servers in the world.
There's no one company that could have imagined all the different cases where computers are used these days. And Linux, thanks to its adaptability, where everyone can just tweak it in little ways to make it fit their use case, now covers all the use cases.
But all of this, it all relies on one key assumption, that the code is secure. Now, there's a good reason to feel this way. Because there are so many people looking at the code, there's this idea that bugs, either intentional or unintentional, won't be too deep to catch. It's known simply as Linus's law, that with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. But there's a big problem with this assumption.
The open source movement isn't one big project. It's an ecosystem. You need thousands of small tools and libraries, each doing a different job, like networking, security, or compression.
Now, a lot of these projects start because one person wants to fix a specific problem. So they build it themselves. They're often unpaid, coding on nights and weekends just to make the tool work. If it's useful, one open source project adopts it, then another. And suddenly you have millions of machines all relying on one person's passion project. That's how the entire ecosystem can end up quietly resting on a project maintained by a single volunteer. There's a famous XKCD comic that captures this idea perfectly. But what happens when that block is compromised?
In our story, our person isn't from Nebraska. No, Lasse Collin is from Finland, and he's been working on a small data compression tool called XZ since 2005. XZ is so good at compression that it's now used in almost every major Linux distribution. For the past 20 years, almost all of the work of keeping the tool compatible with ever-evolving hardware, it's all fallen on Lasse. He's never been paid for it, but up till now, he's been okay with that. Recently, though, he's been under more and more pressure. Over 1 month and no closer to being merged, not a surprise. Progress will not happen until there is a new maintainer. Submitting patches here has no purpose these days. The current maintainer lost interest or doesn't care to maintain anymore. Lasse responds, "I haven't lost interest, but my ability to care has been fairly limited, mostly due to long-term mental health issues, but also due to some other things. It's also good to keep in mind that this is an unpaid hobby project, but it's not enough. I'm sorry about your mental health issues, but it's important to be aware of your own limits. The community desires more. You ignore the many patches been rotting away on this mailing list. Right now, you choke your repo." Lasse is burning out, but just when he thinks he can't handle it anymore, nice job to both of you for getting this feature as far as it is already. Just trying to do my part as a helper elf. Signed, Gia Tan. For months, Gia's been taking some of the load off Lasse. He's been incredibly helpful. Now he offers to step up and take over as maintainer of the project. To Lasse, it sounds almost too good to be true. As I've hinted in earlier emails, Gia Tan may have a bigger role in the project in the future. Finally, Lasse can step back and breathe after 20 years of hard work. But Gia is not who he appears to be. And he's identified Lasse Collin's XZ project as a weak link in the Linux ecosystem, one that could give him access to almost every computer on the internet. Today, we take secure remote logins for granted. I mean, they've worked reliably for over 30 years. But it all started in 1995 at the Helsinki University of Technology, when a hacker captured thousands of usernames and passwords sent over the campus network in a sniffing attack. In hindsight, the problem's obvious. These login requests were being sent totally in plain text, so anyone who intercepted the data could just read it. When Tatu Alonen, a computer researcher at the university, learned of the attack, he made it his mission to ensure that it would never happen again.
Password sniffing was perhaps the most serious security issue on the internet back then.
To do this, his solution needed to ensure two things. First, machines had to establish a secure connection.
If both computers could agree on a shared secret code that they would use to scramble their data, then even if they were overheard, anyone without that secret code would just get gibberish. Now, you could agree on that shared secret ahead of time, in person, but on the internet, that's rarely practical. No, you have to agree on that shared secret ahead of time without ever having met, and also with someone listening in the entire time. It sounds really tricky, but there is a way to do it, and I can show you how using this jar of paint. Say I'm trying to send a message to Gregor over there. The first step is we agree on a shared public color. Let's pick this red. This is no secret, anyone can see this. Now we each pick our own private color. I'm gonna pick yellow, and he can pick whatever he wants. So we take our private color, and then I'm gonna mix that with the public color. It's worth saying now that these mixtures are assumed to be impossible to unmix. So even if you know this orange and you know this red, you can't exactly deduce the exact shade of yellow we used to create it. And this is important for the actual computer example later. Okay, so I'm gonna send this over to Gregor.
So I mixed in my secret color with the public, and I'm gonna pass this to Henry.
So Gregor sent me this, which looks like a sort of dark green sort of color. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna mix it with my original private color.
Okay, now that I have Henry's secret color mixed in with the public, I'm gonna add some of my own.
So we end up with this sort of distinct olive color. There's my yellow in there, I can see, and whatever Gregor had in his side. And the thing is, because each set of paints went through the same process, they both end up with this same olive green, even though we never shared our secret colors. So we end up with this shared secret color at the end that no one else can get. And that means that we can use it as our secret code when sending information. Now, in the real exchange, we use big public numbers instead of colors, but the idea is the exact same. Each side mixes in their own private number, using some math that, when you try to reverse it, leads to a discrete log problem, which makes it practically impossible to unmix them. That way, we solve the first problem. But there is another threat that's unaccounted for. Say a hacker, like Casper here, tries to sit in between us. Now, we can create a legitimate connection, so we end up with a shared secret code. And Casper can do the exact same thing with Gregor. Now, whenever I send a message, he can relay that to Gregor, he can change and modify it and send his response back, and to each of us, the connection looks legitimate, but Casper's sitting between us the whole time. He's a man in the middle. So I need a way of authenticating that Gregor is really who he says he is. Now, we could do this again by agreeing on a password ahead of time in person, but we need a practical way to do it over the internet. This was the second problem that Tatu had to solve. To make that happen, Gregor can take two really big prime numbers, which he keeps secret. He then multiplies them together to get an even bigger number, which he then makes public. Now, when I want to send Gregor a message, I just take that big public number, and I scramble it in a way that only Gregor, who knows the two prime factors that make up that big public number, can successfully unscramble. For anyone else, getting those two prime factors is practically impossible. So as long as I know that that big public number actually belongs to Gregor, I know that anything encrypted to that key can only be read by him.
This is called RSA encryption, and it means that if I know the certificate is valid, then I accept the connection. And by authenticating Gregor, it foils our man in the middle, Casper Devious. Tatu Ulonen combined these two steps, securing the channel and authenticating the user, into a protocol for remote logins between machines. It gave you the same simple text shell people were used to, a plain terminal where you type commands, but now the connection was encrypted. He called it Secure Shell, or SSH, and it was immediately useful. Many Linux machines don't even have keyboards or monitors, especially not servers, so you want to be able to log in and control them remotely. So SSH was soon adopted on almost every machine that ran Linux. And as Linux spread, so too did SSH.
Today, when you control a machine remotely, there's a good chance you're using SSH.
SSH is literally the maintenance backbone of the entire internet.
And the most widely used open source SSH implementation is called OpenSSH. And because it's so popular, it's heavily protected.
I mean, OpenSSH is probably one of the most closely examined projects out there because it's just so vitally important to the security of servers everywhere. Having a way to bypass the authentication in a secure shell, it's like having the master key to the hotel. It lets you into every room.
This is why Jiatan wants a way into OpenSSH, but trying to hack it directly would be almost impossible. Lucky for Gia, the open source model doesn't just mean that operating systems are stitched together from many programs, but that each of those programs is itself stitched together from other programs. Those are called dependencies.
OpenSSH is one of the most scrutinized software packages, but that doesn't extend to all of its dependencies.
Gia believes that if he can compromise the dependency of OpenSSH, he can sneak an exploit into the main project. And it just so happens that Lasse Collins' compression tool XZ is linked through a chain of these dependencies.
Now, Lasse's original goal with XZ was to find a better way to compress data on Linux. That data could be anything, code, an image, text. But what was important to Lasse was that once you compressed and decompressed it, it had to come back exactly the same. The method had to be lossless. Let me give you an example. That's my bad. But we're gonna take the lyrics to Rick Astley's hit, Never Gonna Give You Up, and we're gonna try to compress it. Now, say we take this and we represent it as a stream of characters, and each one gets a fixed width 8-bit code. Now, that works, but it's inefficient. If we go through this stream and just count up how often each symbol appears, you'll notice there's a pattern. Some appear more frequently, like N with 430 uses, and some barely at all, like J with 1 use. To save space, why don't we give the ones that appear more frequently shorter codes? And the rarer ones, well, they can afford to be long. But how do we do that? So let's start by counting up how often each symbol appears, and sorting that from most frequent to least frequent. We take the 2 least frequent symbols and join them together into a pair. We then treat that pair as a new combined symbol, whose frequency is the sum of the 2 it represents. We can then reinsert that back into the list. Then we do it again. We take the 2 least frequent items, combine them, and then reinsert them back into the list. And we do that over and over again until we get this massive structure called a Huffman tree. Now, to get our codes, we just walk the tree. A step right is a 1, a step left is a 0. So for example, to get R, we just go right, left, left, right. So the code is 1001. So what you'll notice is the more commonly occurring symbols naturally appear at the top of the tree, so they get shorter codes, while the ones that appear less frequently are at the bottom of the tree. The system works well, but it also has a weakness. In our Never Gonna Give You Up example, it always encodes NEVER space. It doesn't realize that this whole chunk repeats. So what if instead of looking at symbols, we looked at those chunks? Now, they don't have to be words, they can be parts of words or even longer, they just have to be patterns that repeat. So let's scan through the text, but keep a rolling dictionary of what we've just seen. Then as we move forward, we can check whether the next chunk has already appeared. And if it has, we don't need to write that chunk again. We just write a code with 2 numbers, how far back to look and how many characters to copy. Now, when we decompress, we can just read along, and whenever we hit one of these codes, we jump back, copy the matching chunk, and paste it into place. 2 scientists, Lempel and Ziv, published this algorithm in 1977, so it became known as LZ77. But some of these symbols and pointers show up more often than others. They actually have their own frequencies. So we can feed that whole stream into another Huffman tree to get a second layer of compression. And in our demo, it actually gets the file down 85% smaller than the original. This might look new, but you've almost certainly used it yourself. It's called deflate, but it's better known for the files it creates, .zip. If you ever clicked close on this before, you've definitely used it. But Huffman only uses the overall frequency of a chunk repeating. Real data isn't just random chunks. In our example, after never gonna, you might get give you up, let you down, or run around and desert you. You might get make you cry, you might get say goodbye, or tell a lie and hurt you. Each one has its own probability, and you can represent these probabilities with a mathematical tool called a Markov chain. The algorithm can then encode the stream of data so that the more probable next chunks cost few bits, and the less probable ones cost more. If you combine that with a much bigger search window, so it can point much further back in memory, then you get the Lempel-Ziv Markov chain algorithm, or LZMA. LZMA was developed by Igor Pavlov around 1998, and it often beats much more familiar methods. In many cases, it can shrink files to about 70% of the size of a typical .zip.
Lasse took this elegant compression algorithm and made it work on Linux. And he called it XZ not because it stood for anything, but just because it sounded cool.
I'm using XZ quite a lot. I think XZ is a wonderful project. There are lots of different ways of compressing data. Some of them are fast, but they don't compress very well. And some of them are slow, but they get extremely good compression.
But across Linux, projects are constantly shipping the same files and updates to millions of machines. So XZ is perfect. You compress something once, then you get a smaller file to download forever. Lasse released XZ in 2009, and over the next decade and a half, it went from a niche tool to the common choice whenever a project needed effective lossless compression.
So XZ quietly spread everywhere, eventually becoming a dependency of OpenSSH.
So it was some point in about February 2024. And Jiatan, he emails me, he's got all of these new features in the new version of XZ.
He wins Rich over almost immediately.
So I get to talk to hundreds of contributors all the time, and I do get a feel for them. I feel, are they good coders, which is what I really care about? Are they conscientious people? Are they helpful? Do they respond to bug reports quickly? And in all of the dimensions, Geotam would be a very good contributor because he's obviously a good coder. He's very responsive. He's very keen. And I love all that.
All indications are that Gia is a great contributor, and this puts Rich at ease, so he lets his guard down. And that's often where the problems start on the internet. You can't keep your guard up forever. But lucky for us, with today's sponsor NordVPN, you don't have to. NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro blocks dangerous websites before they load. It stops malicious downloads, and it strips out trackers and intrusive ads automatically. And it works even when you're not connected to the VPN. So a lot of these attacks never get the chance to start in the first place. I use NordVPN whenever I'm traveling or working on public Wi-Fi because it means that I don't have to think about who's running the network. It's just one click, and it's so fast that I often forget that it's on. Not just that, if there's a show that's no longer available in my region, or a sports team that's blacked out, like I'm often watching international football and they don't quite have it where I'm going, well, in that case, I can just switch my server location with one click to unlock the content. Apparently, you can even use it to find better deals on plane tickets by changing your IP address to another country. I haven't tried it yet, but that sounds fascinating. So if you want to try it, you can get the best deal by going to nordvpn.com/Veritasium. When you use that link or this QR code, you'll get a huge discount. Also, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee through Nord. It's a no-brainer. So again, that's nordvpn.com/Veritasium. Or you can click the link in the description below. Thanks so much to Nord, and let's get back to Gia and the prize he's got his eyes on.
At this point, we were preparing RHEL 10.
See, Red Hat ships two major flavors of Linux: Fedora, which is free and publicly available, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHEL, which is available through a paid subscription. This one has to be stable and secure because it's widely used on the most important machines, like in governments and hospitals. Gia wants his code in RHEL, but RHEL only has a new major release about once every 3 years.
So there's definitely a deadline. That deadline was around sort of March, April in 2024.
Gia has to act fast. He wants complete control of any compromised machine. And to pull it off, he has 3 steps in his plan.
Step 1, the Trojan horse. The code for XZ lives on a website called GitHub, which tracks all edits to XZ's code using a tool called Git, which was also developed by Linus Torvalds. So Gia starts by making small changes. He changes the primary contact for bug reports to his own email. He tweaks small tools that will help him later.
But he can't sneak in the payload this way. I mean, it'd be too obvious. So he needs a way to sneak it in without it ever appearing as normal source code on GitHub.
So when you're writing compression software, it's very often the case that your software is full of these binary blobs, as we call them, so just lumps of binary, which are used to test the compression or the decompression is still working.
Nobody reads these test blobs. They're included without ever appearing in the human-readable source code. They're assumed to be garbage data.
But for Gia, this is the perfect place to hide his payload, inside something that at first glance looks harmless. But in reality, it's a Trojan horse. But with the Trojan horse inside of XZ, it's still just a lump of data in a binary blob. He has to unpack it. So in the code that builds the project, he slips in a small, easy-to-miss change. It hides among all the automatically generated code and quietly unpacks his payload, inserting it into the XZ library. But now that it's inside of XZ, it still has to pick the right time to act.
On to step 2, Goldilocks. Gia's end goal is to compromise a very specific part of the SSH connection process, the RSA authentication step. He He realizes that if he can slip a small malicious component in there, let's call it the payload, then every time SSH checks for a key, his code will run first. It will quietly look for a special master key that only he knows, and if it sees that key, it'll let him straight in. If it doesn't, it'll call the real code and no one's the wiser. So he will have his backdoor entrance to open SSH.
But he can't just go in and rewrite RSA decrypt, the function that verifies the client's identity during the login. It's not that easy.
See, when you build an application, you could take all the code you need from different libraries and bundle it into your application. But there's a big drawback to this approach. If 10 different applications on a system all bundle the same library, you end up with 10 separate copies on your machine. So it's redundant. That's why modern systems mostly use shared libraries. When an application starts, the linker fills in a table of addresses. These addresses point to the functions and variables it needs from the libraries it links to. That table is called the global offset table, or GOT. Now when it wants to use something from a shared library, it just checks the GOT and jumps to the right spot in memory. RSA decrypt doesn't belong to OpenSSH at all. It comes from a shared crypto library. So to hijack authentication, Gia can overwrite the GOT entry that tells SSH where it is. And to do that, he can use a little known tool called an ifunc resolver.
The ifunc is used where, let's say you want to optimize your code to run on Intel hardware and AMD hardware. Now, you could write the software just for Intel, and it would run very fast on Intel, and it probably would run very badly on AMD hardware.
Instead, you keep multiple versions of the same function, and the ifunc resolver picks the right one for the hardware you're on. At first glance, that sounds like a way for Gia to trick the system into thinking it's running hardware that needs its own compromised version of RSA decrypt. But there is a catch. A library can only define ifunc resolvers for its own functions. And since RSA decrypt doesn't belong to XZ, it can't use an ifunc resolver to override it. But ifunc can still help him.
So it will, very, very early on in the running of the program, it will do this sort of determination of what hardware is available. And crucially, it does let you run your own code in the library very early on.
Now, at this early stage, from within an ifunc resolver, Gia could try to directly rewrite the GOT entry for RSA decrypt. But at this point, the system is still filling in the GOT, so even if Gia changes the RSA decrypt slot, the loader will come along later and write the real address back in, wiping out his change. And there's a limit on the other side as well. To make this sort of hijacking harder, once every entry is filled on the GOT, the system marks the table read-only. That means that if Gia waits too long, the RSA decrypt entry is frozen.
So he has to slip it in at a very precise moment, after the RSA decrypt entry is filled in legitimately, but before the table gets marked read-only. And that tiny window is the Goldilocks zone. And to hit it, he's going to need another tool. So linking shared libraries in the GOT often leads to bugs. So Linux has a special debugging feature that tracks what the system's doing.
It lets you run code whenever the linker writes a symbol's address into the GOT. It's called a dynamic audit hook, and normally you'd use it to profile performance. But crucially for Gia, there are no real guardrails. The hook can run any code he wants. And this is where ifunc finally pays off. Gia uses an ifunc resolver to set the audit hook early. Then, when the link linker writes in the real RSA decrypt address, the hook fires and swaps in his payload. Right in the middle of the Goldilocks zone.
There is one final complication though. Audit hooks are normally configured by the system, not by libraries like XZ. So when Gia is first looking for the audit hook variable that he's supposed to rewrite, it's actually hidden from him. So he first has to find it. Within the ifunc, he scans a small region of binary code, hunting for signs of the hook. But it's just raw bytes, so he writes a tiny decoder to turn them back into instructions that he can read. Now Gia can find where the hook lives in memory and finally plant his code. Then when RSA decrypt gets called legitimately, it triggers the payload and he's in. But now that he's in, what does he do? And how does he get out of there cleanly?
Step 3, the cat burglar. With Gia's exploit in place, SSH isn't just checking for a legitimate login anymore. It's also listening for a hidden master key.
And Gia's careful. He doesn't want anyone else stumbling onto the back door, so that master key isn't just a simple password. It's actually a mini cryptographic exchange of its own. First, the backdoor code checks for a shared secret, then second, it authenticates the user. And only if both checks pass does the payload run. In effect, it's like the backdoor is running a miniature version of the encryption from SSH inside of SSH. But in SSH, it uses that encryption to keep the attackers out. In this case, the backdoor is using that encryption to make sure that it's only the attackers that can get in. But he's still careful. One of the main ways defenders catch intrusions is through that can get in. But he's still is using that encryption to make sure that it's only the attackers that can get in. But he's still careful. One of the main ways defenders catch intrusions is through SSH logging. So to cover his tracks, he wipes evidence of the backdoor ever firing. And this is on top of the numerous safety checks he's inserted throughout the process to make sure the system supports the backdoor and doesn't crash and draw attention.
And this is the genius of Gia's trap. It's cautious and meticulous, designed to slip through only where it will run invisibly. With all 3 of these steps complete, he can finally control the machine undetected. All he needs to do now is get his updated XZ implemented in the next release. But just as Gia is completing his backdoor, an open source developer requests to remove the dependency that links XZ to OpenSSH. This would spell disaster for the dependency that links XZ to OpenSSH. This would spell disaster for Gia Tan. He becomes frantic, pushing harder and harder to get his compromised XZ into major Linux releases. He gets it into an early experimental build of Debian. He files a request to have it added to Ubuntu.
He's trying to land the backdoor everywhere he can before anyone realizes what's going on.
And it's then that Rich gets his first message from Gia. Over the next few weeks, he gets more and more insistent, urging Rich to add the updated XZ into the next release of Fedora.
I'm always very keen to talk to keen upstream contributors who are really excited about new things in their software, who are really willing to help us get stuff into Fedora. So, that's great. Love it. That's kind of makes my day. It's my happy place.
Eventually, Gia gets what he wants. Rich adds the updated XZ to a pre-release version of Fedora. Gia has succeeded.
Except there's a bug. In low-level code like the backdoor, things you normally take for granted, like memory management, are not done automatically.
If a function grabs a bit of memory, it also has to give that memory back when it's done. And if it doesn't, then every time the function runs, it grabs more and more memory and then never releases it. Over time, the program just keeps growing. That's called a memory leak. And to catch problems like this, developers use a tool called Valgrind. It runs the program more slowly, but watches every memory operation for anything suspicious. Valgrind is raising hell on Gia's code.
We put XZ, this version 5.6.0, into Fedora 40. We get a bug report initially.
And the backdoor in XZ specifically is generating invalid writes errors. Well, the logic was written by hand, bypassing the compiler's safety checks, and so they accidentally wrote outside the memory stack. Now, lucky for Gia, all this isn't immediately obvious. Rich still hasn't noticed what's happening.
New software has bugs, right? It's the state of nature of software. Software is absolutely full of bugs all the time.
Now, the real problem is inside the malicious code in the test file. But Gia can't just go and fix that. That would completely expose the backdoor. So he invents a cover story. He claims that the random data he used to generate the original test files, well, it's not reproducible, so he's replacing it. And in this updated code, he fixes the memory error.
It's a very convincing and plausible explanation for why this test blob has to be updated. But of course, it's not. The real reason.
All right, so now the real fix is in, but if the bug just magically went away, it would look a bit suspicious. So he has to find a way to cover it up.
So what he then does is he changes the reason.
All right, so now the real fix is in, but if the bug just magically went away, it would look a bit suspicious. So he has to find a way to cover it up.
So what he then does is he changes the ifunc code in a way where he adds like a whole bunch of comments and changes to the code around it that doesn't actually change the code, but is plausible enough to look like he's changing how the ifunc works to fix the Valgrind bug.
It does. Listening to it, I'm like, I know that this is the evil hacker Giatan, but I'm like, ooh, that's clever. You know?
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy is obviously not an idiot, right? But none of this is suspicious. This is what we expect from compression software. And as a packager, it's not really my job to fix every bug in upstream software. As soon as it gets to a certain level of difficulty, my thought here is, well, Giatan has actually been writing this software, right? So he's got it all in his head. He knows how it works. It's easier for me to just give him the problem. And I send the bug over to him, and like a day later, he sends the fix back. From my point of view, it's problem solved. It worked. System worked, right? I made the right call. I don't see, at that point, knowing what I know then, I don't see that there's any problem.
So we downloaded Giatan's version of XZ, which was available on Fedora publicly. But we made a slight modification. Instead of using Gia's secret code, we're using our own. And that means that we can take advantage of Gia's backdoor. In this case, we're targeting the Veritasium.com website. And once we get control of it, I got a little trick in store for Derek.
Now, to make sure I don't mess with any real traffic too bad and lose my job, we actually cloned the Veritasium website and put it on a very similar URL. But it will work the same. Of course, Derek doesn't know that I've covered my bases.
Oh no. Man, when you guys do these things, I start to get more and more scared now. I want it to work for the video, but I also don't want it to work because I don't want to screw stuff up. So,
yep. It's the risk you take, I guess, letting us run rampant.
It is a concern.
I'm going to execute a script here, which is going to opening up a port on the Veritasium server. And then on this side, I'm going to execute a little script.
Uh-oh. Henrytasium. Who is this goof? On the main photo, you spent time getting all suited up there.
Of course.
Looking sharp, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Videos Derek would never approve of. Uh-oh.
The concept was, over the years that we've worked together, you've said no to a bunch of my ideas. And I figure now with control of the website, it's about time the world saw it.
Surviving 7 days living underwater. How do saturation divers live at minus 1,000 feet? I mean, you wouldn't be outside, right? So I don't know why you need goggles there and like a respirator, but you're not underwater. Why it's almost impossible to shoot 4,000 meters. It's a sniper video. Yeah. The CIA lied, exposing how the CIA lied about torture. I feel like that still goes into a tough territory for us. How xenon gas replaced oxygen. I attempted to climb Mount Everest on xenon gas. That sounds like a terrible idea. This is what this whole video is about. This whole video is just about trying to get me to greenlight your projects. You know, if people like these video ideas, they can feel free to let us know in the comments. We can actually make them. The top uploaded comment one, I will greenlight happily.
Let's go.
Is this live to the public right now?
It is live. Yeah, it's live on the server. Yeah.
If anyone's on the website right now, that would be very strange for them. Look, I'm not pleased. I would like you to change it back. It doesn't seem like this should be possible on a Linux server. So the big question is, how did you do it?
The address is the server. The seed is our code to get in. And then the command is what we're doing to essentially open up, in this case, NC, which is like opening up a port on the machine that we can then access from this second terminal. Then what we're doing is, on this side, we're running a script that's connecting to that port that's just been opened up, copying our files, and then by the end, we're gonna have root access on the server. That means that it thinks that we own the thing.
That's so crazy. This is a very scary hack. I do not like it.
Another thing is that this is a very obvious way of demonstrating this attack. Like, I've changed everything on the website. You immediately know that I've gone in and hacked the server. If we were doing this for real, we would do it a lot sneakier.
I mean, as you say, right? The thing to do would not be to totally rework someone's website so everyone notices, but to change it subtly so nobody notices, so you can skim data or, yeah, like get credit card details or take payments to a different location and stuff like that.
So you can copy anything you want, you can change anything you want, you can delete anything you want. So if there's any interesting documents or crypto tokens, any files you're interested in, those are yours now. If there is secret communications going across these, and let's keep in mind all of our communication networks are also built around Linux, those communication streams are yours now. If you wanted to encrypt something and ask for ransom, that's possible now.
The possibilities really are endless. After 2.5 years of hard work, slowly infiltrating the XZ project and weaving in this ingenious backdoor, G has done it. He now has free reign on any machine that installs the new Fedora pre-release. And he also gets the same access on Debian testing and Ubuntu's pre-release environments. And with RHEL 10 coming up, his code could infect some of the most important computers in the world. Now he should be able to relax, wait for the release, and he's got his backdoor key. But just when he thinks everything's going right, Andres Freund is a German programmer. He's not a security researcher. Andres Freund is a German programmer. He's not a security researcher, he's not a hacker. He's just an employee at Microsoft, working on an open source project called Postgres. One day in March 2024, he tries out the unstable release of Debian to make sure that Postgres will run smoothly. But while checking the server connection times, he notices something odd. A slowdown. It's not much, in the worst case it's only half a second, but it's enough to make Andres suspicious. We tested the connection times ourselves on our own version of the XZ hack, and we found the exact same thing. Consistent slowdowns of about 400 to 500 milliseconds. Andres had already seen the problems with XZ and Valgrind weeks earlier, and this only makes him more suspicious. So he digs in deeper. He looks at recent additions to OpenSSH and traces the delay back to an update in XZ. He sees the binary test files, but notices that they were never used in a test. It's even stranger. Andres tries to get back to work, but he can't stop thinking about it.
I remember sitting in a bunch of meetings and not really being able to concentrate because it feels like I need to continue looking into this.
Eventually, Andres sees it. This isn't some bug. This is a backdoor.
And this backdoor is meticulous. It hunts through memory to find the audit hook. It implements a decoder to read those raw bytes, and then it wraps everything in custom encryption and safety checks so that it only triggers on the right kind of connection. I mean, it even garbles its own strings so that it won't be detected. It's incredibly cautious. But all of that takes time. And in the end, that's what grabs Andres' attention.
If they had done less obfuscation, I probably would not have noticed that anything was wrong.
Now, XZ's security contact is Gia Tan, so Andres can't exactly report it through the usual channels. Instead, he emails the Debian security team directly and posts a detailed report to a public security mailing list. Then, all hell breaks loose.
I'm
You would not have noticed that anything was wrong.
Now, XZ's security contact is Jia Tan, so Andres can't exactly report it through the usual channels. Instead, he emails the Debian security team directly and posts a detailed report to a public security mailing list. Then, all hell breaks loose.
I'm called up on, I think it was a Friday evening, in fact I'm sure it was a Friday evening, to join a internal Red Hat meeting. And it's immediately obvious that this is not a normal meeting because like our head of security is there. It's explained to me that it's been found by somebody in the community that XZ has a backdoor, and immediately I'm like, WTF, how did this happen?
To cover their bases, Red Hat quickly rolls Fedora back and tells all their users to revert. And the whole open source community starts digging into the project to understand what went wrong.
One thing is clear though, Andres is a hero.
Now, the fact that this was discovered in a different test at all, that was lucky, but then what are the chances that someone who isn't looking for a security bug spends days investigating this? So big kudos to the researcher, and yeah, saved us all from possibly a doomsday on the internet.
I think that Andreas did a brilliant job because he did what I should have done actually, which is I should have looked at the bug when I saw it, and I should have gone there, like a crazy hound sort of sniffing around trying to find out what's going on.
Andres even gets a shout out from the CEO of Microsoft. But when the story breaks, the mainstream response is surprisingly muted.
Actually, I'm still surprised now that the mainstream news outlets haven't really covered this very much. I can tell you how many systems would have been compromised, which would have been millions.
Anything from spying to ransom to just taking down entire countries, you could have done it with this backdoor.
I guess the big question is, who is Jia Tan?
That's the question, isn't it? Okay, so my feeling is that Jia Tan, the person that I talk to, I believe is one person. But I also believe that behind him must be a group of people. And they worked for quite a while. I mean, they were at this for perhaps 2.5 years that we know about.
If you look back at the accounts pressuring Lhasa, they share some similarities. They use free email addresses, and they have almost no footprint outside of the XZ threads. These were very likely sock puppet accounts, identities manufactured to apply pressure as part of a multi-stage social engineering campaign.
Now, who spends $1 million and takes 2.5 years to attempt to break into every hotel room on the internet with the master key? I think it's not a criminal organization, because I don't think a criminal organization would have that patience to spend that time without any real return. So I think it has to be a nation state actor here.
A lot of the aliases, like Jia Tan, they sound like Asian names, and the published changes are all timestamped in UTC+8, Beijing time. So the signs point to China. And that's why it's probably not China. I mean, why would they make it that obvious? Every other part of the operation has been so meticulous, so cautious. And they also worked on Chinese New Year, but not on Christmas. And over the years, there were 9 changes that fall outside of the Beijing time, into UTC+2, which is a time zone that includes Israel and parts of Western Russia. That's why some experts have speculated that this could be the work of APT-29, a Russian state-backed hacker group also known as Cozy Bear.
But again, do we know? No, of course we don't know who it is, and we likely will never know. Jia Tan himself just disappeared as soon as this exploit became publicly known and never heard from again.
In a sense, it doesn't matter whether this was Russian or Chinese or Iranian. We need to protect from these types of backdoors no matter where they're coming from.
I see this as like, the canary in the coal mine of what's going to be happening as attackers get more sophisticated, they make fewer mistakes, the gloves are off in a way. I don't think that the Linux community is fully, is fully ready for this yet.
In the aftermath of XZ, the open source community poured over countless small, similar projects, looking for similar campaigns. but they found almost nothing.
I'm worried that we didn't find other backdoors. The incentives are just too clear. There are state-sponsored parts of either governments, militaries, or even private contractors working for states that are all preparing for the next cyber escalation, some kind of a war, some kind of a geopolitical conflict. And where are all of those backdoors? There's just too many people incentivized to put backdoors for the few backdoors that we're actually discovering.
Now, some experts have argued this reveals a fundamental flaw in the open source model, but not everyone agrees.
Closed source software would be no better here. In fact, who's to say that there aren't already state spies working as paid software engineers at some of the larger companies, putting in exactly backdoors like this? But then there would be no community member running free testing and detecting this by chance. This backdoor, if anything, underlines the ethos of open source.
I mean, just think of what it took to get this done in public. There was a multiple-year social engineering campaign. There were all these layers of misdirection, and then there was code that was designed to withstand constant scrutiny. Compare that now with a closed source hack. Sometimes all it takes to get a backdoor installed there is a court order. Or you have a public company that can just brush a breach under the rug. I actually used to work as an open source researcher myself at the Japanese telecom giant NTT. And my perspective is that it's only because this is an open source project that it's been picked apart, analyzed, and turned into a conversation about security at all. One that focuses on the fundamental vulnerability. It's not the code, it's the people. And now the system has not supported them enough.
I feel for Lasse that he's given this beautiful gift to the whole world. And, what has humanity done back to him, right? We've poisoned his gift. And then I think implicitly a little bit, not everyone's saying this, but implicitly we're blaming him for not being there to maintain this stuff for free forever. But why are we demanding that Lasse do anything when he's not being paid for this stuff? And that's, in my opinion, quite unfair. On this Saturday evening, we were working together on a workaround for this bug in Rel 9 that he's added to XZ, and he absolutely could have told us to get lost and didn't. And what a brilliant guy.
In April of 2017, defendant Jeffrey Thurman was charged with murder, armed robbery, and conspiracy to commit armed robbery in Washtenaw County, Michigan. Mr. Thurman was convicted of armed robbery and conspiracy charges, and after being incarcerated for a period of time, he was placed on probation. In 2021, Mr. Thurman moved, transferring his probation to Texas, and on September 16, 2023, he was charged with felony aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in Harris County, Texas, and was later released on bond. On October 1st, 2024, the 22nd Circuit Court in Michigan issued a warrant for Mr. Thurman's arrest for violating his probation, and on October 31st, a bond condition violation report was also filed in Harris County based on alleged curfew violations. A court date on the alleged bond condition violations was scheduled for November 18th, 2024, in front of Judge David Fleischer in the Harris County Criminal Court in Houston, Texas.
I've never met you before. I don't know you. All I know is that you have picked up a case from out of state. So, we're not disputing the underlying charge. We're not fighting it. None of that matters. What we really here are all about is identity, right? Are you this person? If so, how do we get you back to the jurisdiction that you're wanted from? So here it says that you are wanted from Michigan, Washtenaw, Michigan.
Washtenaw County, yes.
Yeah, Washtenaw County. And it says here that you're wanted out of there for armed robbery. So I know that you're going to tell me it's little bunnies jumping in the woods. It's not that big of a deal, yada, yada, yada. But my primary concern is public safety. We have enough death, dismemberment, and hysteria in Harris County as it is, and I don't want any more blood on my hands. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Shh. So your lawyer is asking me to set you a bond, and I don't know, because if you're a public danger, I'm gonna have a hard time doing it. Right?
Understandable, Your Honor.
Oh, Miss Chisholm's not even here.
May I speak? Because she was just up there. May I speak, Your Honor?
Your lawyer's not here,
Okay.
so until your lawyer gets back, I'm not gonna let you go. I'm gonna bring you back out, but your lawyer's not here. I can't talk to you without your lawyer here. So I'll bring you back out here as soon as she gets back, and then we'll go right through the rigmarole again, okay? Sorry, I didn't even realize she's not here. Mr. Thurman, you're back. Okay. So I told you before, two of my main concerns are, or my two main concerns are, number one, are you going to go back to the jurisdiction that where you're wanted from? And number two, most importantly, are you a danger to my public? I take public, safety. It's as important as my hair. You know what I mean? It's that important, right? Because I don't want anything to happen out there with my name attached to a bond. I try everything in my power to ensure that everybody's protected. And I see that you're wanted for a really serious case. It's an armed robbery, right? I mean, that's what you're wanted for. There's no denying it. That's what it says on the paperwork.
He's on lifetime probation in Michigan.
Lifetime, there's such a thing as lifetime probation?
There is.
Yes.
Whoa.
So that Kate, I'll let you do the talking.
No, he did his time and he got out and lifetime probation out of Michigan. So that's what's happened. I believe it got.
So how on what would, aside from like a murder case,
So he was
what
charged
would
with
garner?
murder twice, along with 2 armed robberies.
I wasn't charged twice with no murder.
It just shows up.
It just shows up
Oh, I
twice.
was about to say, I wasn't charged
Murder
twice.
along with armed robbery or aggravated robbery in our jurisdiction. He's placed on probation. Since that time, he's been charged in our jurisdiction with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and felon possession of a weapon. In those, he had bond conditions when it started off, where he was ordered to have a GPS monitor. He has had multiple curfew violations on top of that noted. And so I do believe he's a safety risk, because even with literally an ankle monitor, he doesn't follow court conditions. And so I believe he is a safety and flight risk. And the fact that there was a weapon involved with multiple witnesses, some of them children, him threatening to murder them, is that I would be opposed to a bond being set. Also, it should be noted that because of the way the probation was transferred, I can't confirm, so I can't approach on it yet. But from what I see on the system is that he moved the probation to Texas, which means there's an ICA, but I don't have the documents, which is why I can't present them. If there's an ICA hold, he's ineligible for a bond, because that's an ICA hold. I don't have it, which is why I can't say, but if I get the documents.
Interstate compact agreement.
The prosecutor explains that Mr. Thurman may not be eligible for bond due to a potential so-called interstate compact agreement hold. This refers to the Interstate Compact for Adult Offender Supervision, the formal nationwide system that governs what happens when a probationer from one state is supervised in another. Texas participates in the compact under Section 510.017 of the Texas Government Code, and Michigan also adopted the compact in Section 3.1012 of the Michigan compiled laws. The compact created the Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision, which establishes rules governing the interstate movement of offenders. And under Rule 5.101, the so-called sending state, in this case Michigan, is permitted to quote-unquote retake a supervised individual via warrant. In turn, the quote-unquote receiving state, which is Texas here, is required to assist with apprehending the supervised individual and to notify the sending state once the individual is in custody. Additionally, Rule 5.111 requires that a supervised individual against whom retaking procedures have been instituted shall not be admitted to bail or other release conditions. Now, in practical terms, this means that Texas was required to treat Mr. Thurman as being held not just on the Harris County case, but also on the Michigan warrant. So even if Judge Fleischer set bond on the new Texas charge, Mr. Thurman still might not be eligible for release due to the Michigan warrant.
I understand. May I speak, Your Honor? Of course. Okay. After we talking about the probation, I'm at the probation, the GPS curfew wise, my judge knows all that was going on. So he knows every information and why I've been late. I have evidence of why I'm late. So he knows everything that's going on with my GPS.
You're not supposed to be late.
He knows why though.
I understand that.
That's why he overlooked. He said, "Okay, it's fine." So he said it was fine.
Quick question, is it a motion to adjudicate?
Well, no, it's still an open case. It's not under probation, but you're just asking if they do a bond violation report. They did on November 1st, 2024. They filed a motion to revoke.
Oh, so it's recent.
It's very recent.
So they've not
this month.
heard, okay, and then so there's not been a hearing on that yet, right?
No, but that's even after they amended the order. Also, he has further bond violation reports on December 18, 2023, another one on November 28, 2023, and that's after they amended it twice. One moment. So he seems to be agreeing with this. So the fact that he has 3 violations on top of having lifetime probation and a possible ICA, obviously, I'm still opposed for him.
Why are you on lifetime probation?
That's the way they set it up as. I took the plea deal.
What are you on probation for?
The armed robbery, conspiracy to commit armed robbery. I did 5.5 years. Came home off lifetime probation. And to continue what I was saying, so I'm a threat to, a flight risk. I can't be a flight risk. Every court that they set, I came every single time. Every court date that Michigan have set, I flew out there every single time. I knew I was getting locked up Monday. They told me that Thursday. I still showed up to court and got locked up. So there's no flight risk in this whatsoever if I've been showing up every single time.
And you may be showing up, but at the end of the day, you continue to do what you want to do without regard to bond conditions.
And what do you mean by that, Your Honor?
Meaning that they put you a GPS monitor, and they give you a curfew.
Yes.
And you don't abide by the curfew.
I was working, Your Honor. That's why the judge has extended, because they had my probation curfew time at us. I forgot what time they had as. But I had started my new job because I came, got locked up, lost my other job. He said, okay, the violation he's talking about, I came into court and talked to the judge, and he extended my curfew. He was like, okay, you've been working. I said, yes, I have documentation of new work. So I'll show all my documentation, and he said, okay. So the stuff he's mentioning violations for, they're already been taken care of. So he's not stating that either. He said 2023 is, obviously I'm still free, right or wrong. I'm still free. That means he's seen all the paperwork. I came with legit paperwork.
And that's kind of where I was coming from at it. If it's a lifetime probation and it's curfew violations that he's still out, my speculation would be that he was able to make an explanation to the judge, and that's why he's not been revoked. So he's still here.
Mr. Thurman argues that he did not violate his probation because the judge reviewed his curfew violations and extended his curfew so that he could work. Court records show that on September 22, 2023, Mr. Thurman's bond conditions were amended to include a GPS-monitored curfew of 6 p.m. on Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and 24-hour house arrest on Sundays. A bond condition violation report was submitted on November 17, 2023, alleging multiple curfew violations. And on November 28th, Mr. Thurman appeared in court, and the judge modified his curfew to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. After the curfew was modified, another condition violation report was submitted on December 15, 2023, indicating that Mr. Thurman entered his home after curfew at 11:11 p.m. on December 1st. Mr. Thurman was admonished, but no further action was taken at that time. However, on October 31st, 2024, yet another bond condition violation report was submitted alleging violations of the 11 p.m. curfew on 12 separate dates. This violation report is what led to the present court date in front of Judge Fleischer. Accordingly, while it does appear that Mr. Thurman resolved the 2023 curfew violations with the judge and received an extended curfew, the curfew violations Judge Fleischer was being asked to review in the present hearing occurred after that extension and had not yet been reviewed by any judge.
The underlying charge, it's still a charge and that's what it is. Like he said, he turned himself in on Thursday knowing that he was going to get arrested and held. And so I'm sure that Michigan it's a probation violation because of the underlying charges. And plus that's where that MRP is probably coming from. I believe he's proven time and time again that he's gone to Michigan, taking care of what he needs to take care of, and he will still be here he's been on bond on the underlying case for about a year. Your Honor, he's not been locked up this whole time up until this recent arrest. So, and at this point in time, this is really just for since we don't have proof of an ICA, if the judge is willing to set a bond, how much that would be, if there's a willingness to set a bond.
Let me read this to you.
Yes, Judge.
Texas Code of Criminal Procedure 17.03. NLR, out of state Michigan, armed robbery, armed robbery with a conspiracy, 2021. Probation transferred to Texas 3/20/21. Concurrently charged with murder, which was dismissed. No holds. Defendant is not indigent, and defendant is alleged to have gone to complaining witness's home and pointed a gun at complaining witness and complaining witness's 3 children because one of the complaining witness's children was involved in a dispute with defendant's sister at the child's school. Defendant threatened to kill, quote unquote, everyone in the home. Defendant then left complaining witness's home and came back with defendant's father, both ready to fight complaining witness and complaining witness's wife. That's the aggravated assault that we have now. So, knowing that you're on lifetime probation for a very serious case, you know that you're supposed to be out there with a halo over your head. And yet you pick up an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon where allegedly a gun is pointed at kids. I mean, the way your mannerisms.
I would say something, Your Honor, that's why.
But don't, though. You have this open case.
Understandable.
Everything they can say, they can use it against you. My concern is public safety, man. And you got to understand that I don't know if you're guilty of this offense or not, but the problem is bad stuff keeps happening to you for some reason. It's like sometimes people are their own worst enemy. They get out and then something happens and then they just end up picking up another charge. It's like a cold. You pick up another charge, you pick up another charge here, you pick up another charge there, you don't follow bond conditions here. Mr. Thurman, you scare me, man.
Can I scare you, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Judge Fleischer informs Mr. Thurman that he would be concerned for public safety if he were to release him on bond based on these serious allegations of violence against him and the repeated bond condition violations. Under Article 17.40 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, judges are empowered to impose any reasonable condition of bond related to the safety of a victim of the alleged offense or to the safety of the community. Additionally, Article 17.40 provides that a judge has the authority to revoke a defendant's bond if the judge finds by a preponderance of the evidence that the defendant violated a condition of bond. Now, so-called preponderance of the evidence means that after considering the evidence presented, the judge concludes the alleged violation is more likely than not to have occurred. Therefore, Judge Fleischer could decide to revoke Mr. Thurman's bond if he determined that the evidence evaluated under this standard showed that Mr. Thurman did, in fact, violate his court-mandated curfew.
And I've been out for a whole year since this case happened, and this is my first time being into this courtroom again, and you're fearful whose safety if I've been doing nothing but right and working.
That's not true.
That has been true. I've been out for a year on bond and have not been into this no courtroom, but in Orange Jumpsuit, I should say. Your courtroom, anybody's
you
courtroom.
want me to reward you for being
But you say you're in fear. You say you're in fear for safety. That's what I'm saying. Like, who are you in fear of? I have not been into any trouble whatsoever. I've been squeaky clean. Just I bond it out.
And Your Honor,
You don't get rewarded for being a good person out there. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be like that anyways.
I understand that wholeheartedly, Your Honor. I'm just saying, but you say you fear, and I'm saying, how are you in fear if I've not been doing anything? That's showing you. That should show you some type of sign. Like, okay, he's not been doing anything wrong. So where is the fear come to play? That's what I'm asking you.
The fear is really because, when people come here, it's little bunnies jumping in the woods, rainbows, gumdrops. And then when they get out there, they turn into different people. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. And I don't want that. Like, I don't want someone out there to suffer because we let you out. I let you bond out. You've got an armed robbery, you've got an ag assault. You continue to violate conditions on those bond, right? That shows me that you're not willing to abide by bond. I mean, quite frankly, you're lucky to even be out on those charges with the ankle monitor, and you continue to violate.
Your Honor, you keep saying violate like if I was in violations they have on file, by the way. Those have been taken care of. Once again, you keep on saying violations, but they took care of. The felony court judge seeing I have proven, what's the word I'm looking for? Just proven, facts that this is why I'm late. I have a new job. I got fired because I got arrested from the other job, so I started a new job. For me having a felony in my position, and just call it what it is, a young black man with a felony, it's hard for me to get a job anywhere. So the jobs I do get, I take upon those. So it's hard. For any shift they open up for me, I'm going to take it and show my work ethic to them. So I let the judge know that. He sees that. He understands, like, okay, that's why you keep on bringing up violations. I have to work. I have to eat. I have to have a house to live in, like anybody else here. So you keep on bringing that up. I'll keep saying, I already talked to the judge about it. He granted it already. He let it go. That's why I'm still free to this day. Well, was free to this day. And you keep bringing that up. You saying threat to your fear, which is understandable. Everybody gonna have fear, but I have not been into any trouble. I've been working. I've been working for a whole year. I've been on my P's and Q's. And like you say, the police report that you're reading, sir, the case is still open, so I can't really speak on it. I'm pretty say much, but it's a lot more to what you're just reading on that police report. It's always gonna be video cameras and house ring cameras, body footage. It's gonna be a lot more other things that you're not gonna be able to read off a police report, which is understandable.
Just too much blood, Mr. Thurman. I'm sorry. I can't set you on. It's just too much. I'm sorry. Hey, this isn't.
Do not walk away.
This isn't.
I said, okay, it's fine.
Really, I understand that you're hurt, Mr. Thurman, but look.
I've been doing my best, Your Honor. And y'all sit here telling me I'm the bad guy, and I've been doing nothing but my best of my abilities, working, staying out of trouble. And you're a threat, and I'm a threat to society. Really, for a whole year, I've been out, and they just not issue a warrant for me just now, recently. And I come to turn myself in, and I'm a threat to society. And people, you fear me for what? From turning myself in and show you that I'm not running for nothing. I'm not running for anything. I'm innocent, and I'm coming to show you I'm innocent by turning myself in. But y'all a threat. You can let go of me, sir.
Stop.
You can let go of me.
You do not tell me how to do my job.
You can let go of me. You grab my arm too tight.
Guys, relax.
I'm too tight. All I said, grab me. Look how you grabbing me up.
Back up.
Look how they grab me. I said you let me go a little bit.
You gotta calm down.
I'm calm. I just asked him a question. I asked him why you let me go a little bit, sir. That's all I said.
Open the door.
That's all I said. When you make somebody cuss you out, what do you think? You said I'm all tight. You just look.
So he already waived, so if
He did.
holds it, then it.
Just, I can't.
I'll go talk to him, but once again, Judge, understandably, I think I know that he's frustrated. I believe.
I understand. I get it. And I would be too, but I can't. That's just too much blood. It's too much.
It looked like there was.
Even, what I'm going to tell you, even if he didn't have those bond violations, I'd still be very hard pressed to even,
No, and I was curious because when you brought it up, it was a little bit older, and so I was wondering why.
Do you know, are they going to come get him?
Oh, they're gonna get him. I was trying to figure out why now, and they were just having back and forth.
But here's the problem. So he hasn't made bond on those cases. So we're sitting anyways.
Yeah.
He has not?
No.
He said he did.
No, he's not made bond on those cases. He's
been in jail for a year?
No.
He may have, but they revoked the bond.
Ah.
Yes.
So he's sitting there, and I didn't have the heart to tell him right now that the 14 days is not going to apply.
Yeah.
Because
I gotta do that.
I will. I really.
I will. I'll let him know.
I'd imagine it's gonna get resolved because it's one of those. It's a bizarre. So we revoked. Harris County revoked because Michigan revoked because it was charged with the ag assault. So it's a chain of events because the only thing the court sees is that they revoked on the probation, which was caused.
Please let him know that the 14 days hasn't kicked in, and it will not.
It will not kick in.
Resolves.
Right.
And either he resolves the cases.
So which one does he need to resolve first in order for?
Well, for the felon possession of the weapon, there's.
Is there an offer?
No, it's going to trial. That's why it's been reset out. It's been set for jury trial at least.
Four times.
4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
5 times, Judge.
Next time is January 6, 2025. But he's held on 55,000 bond for the ag assault and 55,000 for the felon possession. So he has to come up with 110,000 for.
Wait a second. So
it doesn't matter what you did today.
Can't. Even if I gave him a bond today, he would still have to make those bonds.
110,000.
So my question now is, when did that warrant for the felonies pick? Because he's saying he's been out for a year ever since this ag assault got picked up.
I show a remand defendant custody on November 18th, but I don't know what the previous.
So the only reason why his felony bonds got revoked was because Michigan revoked.
Oh, no, it doesn't, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's no notes that reflect why they revoked the bond. It just says court directive remand defendant to custody. Let me see if they give an explanation. Hold on.
Okay.
It's remand custody, violation report, but that's not a revocation.
Judge Fleischer denied Mr. Thurman bail, and he remained in custody in Houston. On January 6, 2025, Mr. Thurman pled guilty to a reduced charge of making a terroristic threat, and he was sentenced to 180 days in county jail. On January 27, 2025, Mr. Thurman was arraigned on the Michigan probation violation, and on June 27th, he was sentenced to 10 to 30 years in prison. This case illustrates how a routine bond violation hearing can turn into an interstate complication when a defendant commits crimes in multiple states. Once Michigan issued a probation violation warrant and the Interstate Compact for Adult Offender Supervision came into play, Mr. Thurman's custody status was no longer determined by Texas alone, because a compact hold can operate as a second independent barrier to release, even if one state court is otherwise willing to set bond. At the same time, the hearing underscores the fact that probation and bond are conditional, and curfews, monitoring requirements, and other terms are not suggestions. They are a requirement for remaining out of custody. When those conditions are repeatedly violated, the court's focus shifts to public safety, and a judge has the authority to revoke bond and keep the defendant detained. In the end, this hearing illustrates the tremendous consequences that can result when an individual who is on probation picks up a new charge, particularly a violent felony, and the interstate cooperation mechanisms that states have in place to apprehend and prosecute offenders who cross state lines. Let us know if there's a case or courtroom interaction that you'd like us to explore in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can help foster a more informed society.